If you're posting content every week, if you're showing up, trying your hardest, and still, everything's just like crickets on social media, it might be your fault, but it also might not. Because what I'm going to talk through today is some of the things that you could actually fix and actually start to generate some engagement and leads from your social media content. So hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll know kind of the roadblocks in your marketing that are slowing you down, creating these bottlenecks, how to fix them, what to do, and how to move forward with your business, and hopefully start to actually get some benefit from all that content you're posting on social media. So the first thing that we want to think about is like, where are we at right now if you're in this particular problem? So you're posting and you're getting no DMs. Boo-hoo, right? You're feeling kind of invisible. Like, it doesn't matter how good that content is. It doesn't matter how much value you pack into a carousel, a reel, or whether you're using props, different lighting, cameras, locations, whatever. No one seems to care. The algorithm doesn't care. And people don't care either because there are no views, there's no engagement, whatever it may be. The other frustrating thing is that you're probably watching other people grow faster with worse content. They're mumbling and bumbling in their videos and everything looks a little bit shoddy, a little bit rubbish. And what they're saying isn't necessarily anything different to anybody else. It may even be utterly wrong. But for some reason, social media is lapping that up and they're outpacing you in terms of their growth. So what is it that you're doing wrong? And then when you mix all of those things together, basically you start second guessing yourself. Is it me? Is it the fact that I'm just not cut out for this online business thing? Now, I'll say what most business mentors or people like that won't say is that, yes, you might not be right for this type of business. Building an online business, running an online business is very different to doing something in person. Let's take a personal trainer, for example. There's nothing wrong with being an in-person personal trainer. An online personal trainer and coach is not a progression from an in-person coach. It's just different. And they require different skill sets. If you are doing online, you're going to have to get more involved in the tech side of things, creating content. Maybe in the early stages when you can't necessarily afford to outsource stuff, you're going to have to do video editing. You're going to have to do copywriting, email, automations, building a basic web page and an opt-in page and all those sorts of things. That is a completely different skill set to just coaching people in person. Now, that's not to say you can't learn those things, but some people just don't want to put the effort in to learn those things. So be realistic with yourself. Do you want to put the time and effort into figuring this stuff out, or are you content with just coaching people in person? No right or wrong, but you got to decide what is right for you. The other reality check is that the algorithm probably isn't broken. You just don't necessarily understand how that algorithm works. For example, there are a set criteria that Instagram has that decides whether a post is worth sharing to more people, giving it more reach, giving it more visibility. And if your content isn't hitting those marks, well, it's just going to stay confined to a finite amount of people. It's not going to grow. It's not going to have that kind of mushroom effect where you're going to get seen by more people. Now, most people who have like a one-person business, which is mainly the people that I deal with and coach, they think that their problem or the solution to their problem is volume. So if I post more content, if I post 7 times a week, or if I post twice a day, or if I post on multiple platforms, then that's going to work, because essentially just more opportunities for people to see me talking and me producing content is going to fix that problem. Now, a few years ago, I would have said that that might be true. But the more and more I work with coaches, the more and more I see is that producing more content is almost never the answer. Yes, you need to have a certain level of consistency in content so that the algorithm just doesn't kind of forget you. Like if you're posting once a month, then even if that is the best piece of content in the world, then yeah, you might get lucky and get a bit of reach and stuff like that. But most often than not, Instagram and Facebook, they're going to reward consistency. So if you're not consistent, then that's going to be a problem. But sheer volume, I don't think is the solution anymore. It has to be not necessarily quality in terms of, is it the right camera and the lighting, but are you setting yourself apart from everybody else? Either in how you produce the content, what you say in that content, how you say it, or all those three things combined. Because if you're not standing out, you are literally just blending in with the crowd. And that's probably one of the main problems that people have, is that when they get stuck, like they're posting content, they're not generating engagement, they're not generating leads, is they look to what everybody else is doing. They look to trends. They look to see, okay, well, what's working for everybody else? And then I'll do a bit of that. Well, that's okay, maybe in a short-term situation, but if that's all you're doing, if that's your main tactic, is to literally look at what everybody else is doing, well, guess what? You're just generating content that perfectly blends in with everybody else. It doesn't stand out. And blending in and not standing out is not the way to create your own unique space on social media. So we need to find a way to tease out what makes you different, what makes you unique, and have that be what guides your content creation on a daily and weekly basis. One of the things I get my clients to do, most of the clients that I work with, they get stuck in what I call how-to content. Now, this was something that probably a couple of years ago was the main piece of advice coming out from people who were quote unquote experts on social media, is that you don't need to tell people what to do. You need to show them how to do it. So that extra little bit of information was not just, okay, you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. It's okay, well, the next stage from that, once that's lodged in their brain, is, well, how do I do that? So you create content that is the next evolution of that. And that's perfectly normal, right? We have markets and industries and niches that develop over time. The people, the customers within those niches become savvier, and they require more information and more detail in order to progress towards that selling process. It's something that Eugene Schwartz talked about in Breakthrough Advertising, a classic like marketing book from, I think, like the 60s, right? Everybody's who's doing marketing has probably read that book, or at least referenced something from that particular book. And that talks about this evolution of a market, of an industry, of a niche, and the need to go deeper and deeper with your marketing to keep being relevant. And that is one of the things. So I feel like that how-to content, now you need to go in a different direction, because simply serving up facts, figures, and how to do things might get you a little bit of interest. It's kind of like serving up content on a silver platter. People like lap that content up because they feel like they have a practical thing that they can go and do that's going to help them with their lives, right? But it's not really anymore going to shift people to actually wanting to buy from you. Yes, there are going to be certain circumstances where it does work still, and that's great, but you've got to really play the percentages. And right now, what seems to work best, at least for the clients that I work with, is focusing on why content. So not necessarily what to do, how to do it, but why you should do it. And the reason for that is we want to create a mindset shift. For example, you'll have people who are trying to achieve a particular goal. Let's say it's weight loss. There will be things that they're doing right now, or values that they hold, or beliefs that they have that are limiting their progress. Maybe they are in the trap that they think the carbs are bad and you need to skip breakfast, or whatever it is that they've been told on social media. And those things that they now hold to be true, and the actions that they are taking, might not actually work within their lifestyle. It might be making them miserable. It might be very difficult for them to stick to that rigid structure. So what we want to do is say, okay, well, this is what you're doing right now. This is why it's not working. Here's an alternative way of thinking about it. And here's some proof that that actually works. And if we create content that starts to challenge their thinking, challenge their beliefs, and moves them towards a different way of thinking, we pull them closer to our brand. For example, if I was the person that created the piece of content that said why you should eat carbs if you want to lose weight, right? If that was the first time you'd heard that message, it's counterintuitive for a start. If you're the person that has holding that belief that carbs are bad, I'm now challenging your beliefs. And if you're not losing weight and you hold this belief, now I'm saying, okay, well, here's why that's not working for you. If I then explain that and show you how you can do something different and actually get results, well, now I've pulled you towards my way of thinking and towards my brand, because I'm the person that gave you that epiphany. It's not necessarily I'm showing you mechanics of how to do this, and this. I'm challenging your thinking. And it's that challenging of thinking and pulling people towards your way of thinking that actually is what essentially makes sales. Now, you need a mix of all the other content, the what content, the how-to content, and the why content. But right now, what I see all over social media, especially when I'm working with a client for the first time, is they're missing that why content. And what happens there is that there's no real need for people, they don't feel compelled to take the next step, whether that's opt in for a lead magnet, jump on your email list, or inquire about coaching, because they've not really been like emotionally moved to do something different. So that's why I think the incorporating some of that why content will be very, very crucial. And that brings me to the next thing. And that is that a lot of coaches miss the clear next step. They produce this piece of content, which is great, but then they don't actually make another step a logical thing to do. So for example, I have in my book, which I can grab for you right now, Post to Profits, I talk about the task method for creating content. And it's just a way of thinking about how do you create content that is going to help you move people towards that buying decision. Like, you're going to nurture people actively. Like, it's very easy to do it on email because you're able to write more on an email, you have more of their attention, there's more guaranteed deliverability of that email. So nurturing people on email is, relatively speaking, easy compared to social media, which is why, if you haven't already, you need an email list. You need to be building that email list, not just for the fact that people talk about, it's an asset you own, which is true, but it's the nurture process is so much easier. You can get people through to a buying decision faster via email. But anyway, I digress. We can still do it on social media. What the task system is the T stands for total value regardless of action. And what that means is that the piece of content that we create, whether that is a carousel, a caption with an image, a video, that piece of content should have total value in it, regardless of whether the person decides to opt in for a lead magnet, to DM you about coaching, to jump on your email list, whatever. That should exist as a standalone piece of content that has value, whether that's giving a tip, whether that is making someone laugh, or whether it is using the why principle to get them to think differently about a certain situation or issue. What that does is it means that we're not ever cheating our audience. So even if you're someone who follows me already, or you're already on my email list, maybe you're even a client, there's always a reason for you to watch the content because it has total value. I'm not creating the content as a sole means to a specific action. Yes, I'd love people to everybody that watched a video to opt into my email list and all those sorts of things, but I know that's not going to happen. And if I create content that is basically just an ad, then I'm going to annoy my audience very, very quickly. If we have the idea of total value regardless of action, we consciously avoid spamming our audience, essentially. The A stands for add value in the caption. What that means is that perhaps you're creating a 15 to 20 second video on social media. It's difficult to get a lot of valuable information into those 15 seconds. So you can add more value in the caption. You can give people a reason to explore the next stage of your content, because most of the time you're going to have your main CTA in that caption. So you need to give people a reason to move into that caption and start reading. So the promise of more value, more information, more detail, more context is going to be beneficial. So push people into the caption by adding more value. The S stands for segue. We want to segue from the value in our content to a pitch, if you want to call it that, for our lead magnet, our coaching, or whatever it may be. So you need to have a connection between the value that you've provided and the next step you want people to take. Let's go back to talking about carbs. So if we talked about introducing this concept that you should introduce carbs into your diet if you want to lose weight, because maybe it's going to give you more energy for your workouts, it's going to make you feel less miserable, it's easier to stick to, and so on and so forth, then our segue might be that you've created some resources that show people how they can incorporate carbs into their diet. Or maybe you have a calorie calculator which shows people how to reach their calorie targets and include a decent amount of carbs without actually destroying their weight loss goals and their targets. So now we've created that simple segue, that connection to the next step we want people to take. Now that could be a lead magnet, it could be a follow, it could be a like, it could be a DM me about coaching, a visit my website, listen to my podcast. The action doesn't necessarily matter. The segue just has to be smooth. I call it the NLO, next logical option. I've watched your video, for example, I've read your caption. The CTA should be the next logical option in my brain. It shouldn't feel awkward. It shouldn't feel clunky. It shouldn't feel tagged on to the end. It's the natural thing that I should do next. Now, of course, again, you're not going to get 100% of people take that next logical option, but you are going to increase your chances of getting people to take that action by having that thought process of next logical option. The K then stands for keyword trigger. You might be familiar with ManyChat, which is a service whereby you can have DM automated conversations on Instagram and Facebook. And essentially those conversations are triggered by a keyword. So for example, right, if I wanted you to opt in for a lead magnet, let's say, for example, my guide about including carbs in your diet for happier, faster weight loss. Now, I could say, click the link in my bio, but that's friction. I'm introducing friction into the process because you've now got to go from this caption that you're reading to click the link to go to my profile, to click the link in my profile to go to the page, to then give me your name and your email address and actually submit that to go through that process of opting in, which is fine. Sometimes there's a reason why you would add friction into the process. Maybe that gives you a much more of a committed lead. Now, there's pros and cons to that theory, and some would say that that's not true, and so on and so forth, but we'll leave that for another day. If I was to help you get to that process of opting in much easier and faster, then I can increase the likelihood that you'll actually take that action. So instead of saying, click the link in bio, I can say, comment carbs1 in the comment and I'll DM you the link. Now that's much simpler because I can just on that post, just type in carbs1. That triggers the ManyChat automation. If you've got that set up correctly, what you can do is take the name, the email address from the DMs, not having to send them out to an opt-in page, which increases your chances of conversion. And then I can deliver that link in that specific ManyChat flow. So from the point of view of the potential client or the lead, is that they haven't had to leave Instagram. I haven't interrupted their social media experience to get them to opt in and go through this clunky process. So we can smooth that out. So that's like the task method, having that clear next step and that clear pathway to making an opt-in the next logical option and also a smooth process. But it all starts with that total value regardless of action. You need to have that in your brain as you're creating content. Because if you have in your brain that I want opt-ins, I want leads, you will create content that feels like an ad, and that is going to be off-putting. Now, the third thing that people get wrong and they need to fix is they don't really build up enough trust with their audience. Now, you need social proof, you need credibility, you need maybe some personal stories to show some transparency, not just a bunch of tips. Now, you don't have to have that all the time, but you want to make sure that you are building trust with your audience. Now, trust can come through with sharing valuable posts and facts and figures about whatever it is that you talk about. That's fine, but you probably want to do more than that. In your stories, maybe you're going to show those DM screenshots of people saying great things about your coaching on a daily basis. Maybe you are going to share some of your own struggles. Something that works really, really well on social media is taking a story from your past and then showing that and sharing that with your audience and showing that sort of that arc of that story of how you overcame that situation. Now, that might be a story from something that is specifically relevant to your audience. Again, let's talk about weight loss. So maybe you, before you became a coach or while you were coaching, maybe you struggled with your own weight loss and you talk about an aspect of that you overcame and how you got to the position where you're in right now. That's a relevant story. That shows you're human. Like one of my previous business mentors used to say, if Superman didn't have kryptonite, you'd think he was a prick. And that's kind of true, right? Is that we need that vulnerability to show our human side. Now, you don't have to cry on social media and you don't have to bare your soul and all those sorts of things. Is that you just share a snippet of a story from your past that's relevant to your audience. Now, if you haven't been in the same situation as your audience, that's okay. What you can do is take little stories and little anecdotes from day-to-day life and translate those into meaningful stories. Like, for example, one of the ones that I talk about in courses and things like that is that I wrote an email about a woman in a coffee shop who took probably 10-15 minutes to place her order for coffee because she was fussing over croissants and calories in those croissants and stuff like that. I was getting late for a meeting. I was frustrated, etc., 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 right? So I took that and essentially turned that into a meaningful story for my audience. Now, the way you do that is by focusing on a specific emotion that particular situation conjured within you. So mine was frustration. I was frustrated that this person was taking ages and stuff on stuff. So then I can say, okay, my segue to my meaningful story can be about something that is frustrating and how you kind of rationally work through that. So I can take the story about croissants and coffee, link it with frustration of weight loss or not being able to generate leads from social media, and I create a story that has a little bit of a connection. It shows my personal side, but it's also relevant to my audience. Now, that takes a little bit of skill, it takes a little bit of thinking through, but certainly it is possible to do. And again, you want to talk about things in stories, not just trying to carefully curate advertising and stuff like that, but sharing a little bit of the backstory. Now, it's up to you how much sort of your personal life and stuff you share on social media. There's no right or wrong on that, but essentially you want to start building trust. Now, one of the best ways to build trust is through email, because again, like I said earlier, is that you have much more opportunity to say more because you have more attention. You're not, if someone's in their email inbox, you're not really competing with like post after post after post in a feed. It's a finite number of emails that are sat in an inbox that are worth reading, right? And you're almost guaranteed 100% deliverability. Not guaranteed that they're going to open it or read it or click on a link, but for at least to land in their inbox, provided you're out of the spam folder, is you are going to land in their inbox and have the opportunity that your content is going to be seen. On Instagram, that's not always the case. Yes, if you've got really avid followers, they're going to see your content, but there's so much content on Instagram and Facebook and all these social media platforms that it's going to be very difficult to almost guarantee that your content is seen by the right people every day. So the most important thing that people can do is build that email list and start to send regular emails. And if you're sending stories and you're like the croissant and the coffee one or whatever happens in random life, is that people feel more connected to you because they feel like there's a person, which there should be, behind this specific brand. And if they connect with that person, when you add on all the other stuff that you're doing, the content, whether it's the how-to content, the what content, the why content, if you're doing podcasts, you're doing YouTube videos, if you add in that trust element and that personality element that you have through mainly email, that's going to be really advantageous for generating more consistent leads and sales. So the summary is basically this. The three things that you kind of need to get right and fix are, number one, is that you're creating the right type of content. You're creating content that moves people to a different way of thinking and to an action. So think about creating why content and not getting stuck on creating how-to content. The next thing is you want to have a system, a process for creating content that makes your lead magnet or your coaching the next logical option for your followers. So we use the task method, total value regardless of action, add value in the caption, segue to the pitch, and a keyword trigger. Have that process in mind when you're creating content and you won't go far wrong. The third thing that we then need to think about is building trust. And the main way we're going to do that is through sharing aspects of our personality and potentially our personal life on social media, but using stories and story-based emails to build the know, like, and trust that adds to all the credibility and the authority that we're generating through our social media content. If you start to get those things right, you are starting to build the foundations of a great social media strategy. So what you probably want to do right now is go and audit your last 9 posts. Do they have, are they all this sort of like how-to content, like based on facts and figures? Is there any sort of personal content in there? Are there any sort of why content that's challenging their way of thinking? Do you have CTAs that push them through to the caption, that actually push them towards a lead magnet? Is that CTA, that segue, feeling natural? Or is it kind of forced and just tagged on the end? Is the content itself, does it have total value regardless of the action that you're wanting people to take? Does it exist as a great piece of content regardless of whether they opt in for your lead magnet or not? Another tip, which I haven't kind of mentioned, but is kind of easy to do when you're auditing, is does all your content look the same? Often when people create content, especially if they batch create content, it's the same background every single time. Now, I'm guilty of that too, maybe because there's a little bit of laziness that creeps in, I'll be honest. But if you can have different locations, different camera angles, different vibrant backgrounds and things like that, it always looks fresh, not the same video I've seen a million times. Even if you're saying something different, people just have this kind of mental thing of they've seen this before. It's just the same thing, right? So we have to have something that is unpredictable, because as soon as something looks predictable, we kind of lose our audience. So there you go. That is they are the 3 things that I would focus on if you're struggling to get leads from social media, like getting 0 leads and you want to fix something fast. Focus on those 3 things and you'll be pushing in the right direction. Now, if this kind of helped you out and kind of got you thinking differently, well, there are a few things and a few ways in which you can find out more about what I do and how I might be able to help you with your social media marketing and to generate consistent leads and sales from social media. So I'm actually launching a brand new service, which is going to be a complete done for you social media funnel service, where I work with you to finalize your strategy, the niche, what makes you different, all of those things, like the marketing angle, the marketing research. I'm going to do all of that for you. We're then going to create a specific funnel, or 2 specific funnels, should I say, that is going to be customized for your business and designed to generate you the most leads possible. I'm going to build that whole funnel for you, including the ManyChat flow, including the emails, the email automations, making sure everything connects, and so on and so forth. And then I'm going to help you actually drive traffic to that specific funnel. So that's if you're interested in kind of like a done for you process that is essentially going to take all that frustration away, then I've put a link in the show notes below that will give you more information about that. And if of course you're interested in courses, maybe you're interested in my monthly marketing newsletter, things like that, then head over to Instagram. There's a bunch of links all over there, and you can even DM me if you can't find what it is that you're looking for. But thanks so much for listening. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.